Hello, and welcome to Examination, where I spend way too much time thinking about attractive fictional people in spandex. So, before I had this YouTube channel, I had another one. You can probably still find it out there, long since abandoned. One of the last series I did with it, really one of the last attempts I made to make it, relevant, was a series called Myths and Monsters that was all about mythological creatures. The very first episode I did for it was on werewolves, and during my research for the episode, I came to a realization. Now, these next few words are going to sound really obvious when I say them out loud, so bear with me. All of our culture's most enduring monsters, from werewolves to ghosts to vampires to zombies, are, on some fundamental level, about the loss of one's humanity. For werewolves, this comes in the form of casting off humanity in favor of bestial savagery. But it went deeper than that. Tales of humans becoming animals are as old as civilization. Why? Well, my theory is that it's simply because humanity was proud of civilization. Civilization is the achievement that separates us from the other animals of the world. Civilization is what elevates humanity above nature. Werewolves and creatures of that nature embody the fear that we could lose that, or even worse, that we really aren't so different from the beasts of the wilds after all. That the animal still lurks within us, and all our pretenses of civilization are just waiting to be stripped away, revealing the beast within. Civilization is built on mutual cooperation between people. The evolutionary advantage of humans has always been our ability to feel empathy and to aid one another. This is the trait that allowed us to build our civilizations and brought us into dominance over this planet. The antithesis of civilization, the idea of savagery, is largely built on the idea of an uncontrollable and unempathetic monster. This has historically had some problematic results when cultures label other cultures as savage and therefore less than human, but the idea, the contrast between civilization and savagery still remains in the cultural zeitgeist to this day. Werewolves, Lord of the Flies, Mad Max, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, heck, Far Cry 3. All of these and more are about what happens when the comfortable pretenses of civilization are stripped away, revealing a monster beneath. In some cases, the fiction chooses to show that somebody has become lost to civilized values by casting them as a loner. After all, community is the cornerstone of civilization, and those who shun it must surely be savage. This, at last, brings me to one James Logan Howlett, a character who is better known by the superhero moniker Wolverine. As any self-respecting X-Men fan knows, Wolverine first appeared in the pages of The Incredible Hulk as an antagonist working with the Canadian government. He was then recruited to the X-Men during the events of Giant Size X-Men #1, the comic that relaunched the X-Men with a new team, ending a years-long hiatus. Wolverine quickly became a popular character, likely because he was very much not a traditional superhero. Wolverine was gruff, foul-tempered, short, and hairy. He was the loner of the group, who eschewed the company of others and went and did his own thing. This made Wolverine stand out from his more traditionally attractive teammates. And yes, I am including Nightcrawler in that description. But I'd argue that while those factors made Wolverine stand out, what made him enduring was his duality. From the beginning, Wolverine was portrayed as a man tortured by what he called berserker rages. He would fly into violent episodes where he wasn't fully in control of himself, and his standoffish personality seemed to be derived from his fear that he would hurt people with them. There are quite a few panels where Wolverine laments his rages and how he can't get close to people because of them. In a lot of ways, Wolverine is the feral savage. He is a beast, an animal. Even his name, Wolverine, is a reference to the notoriously fierce creature that lives in the Canadian wilderness. His powers are claws and the ability to heal, which means he can throw himself recklessly into any situation. Wolverine is wild and untamed, and when he flies into a rage, he is as like a rampaging beast. And yet, paradoxically, he is a cultured man. As a direct result of his wild nature, Wolverine seeks structures to contain him. His fascination with Japanese culture is in many ways born from his desire for structure and purpose. Wolverine as a samurai is a concept that is pulled up a lot, and in addition to just the exotic coolness of that idea, the code of Bushido is useful as a tool to guide Wolverine. But that wild side is always there, and it is why, though he can gain respect among the followers of Bushido, he can never truly be one of them. Wolverine must always be a ronin, a samurai without a master, because no master would accept someone so bestial. That is the central conflict of Wolverine. He was an animal seeking humanity, and the most powerful symbol of his lost humanity was his memories. For much of his history, Wolverine did not know his past. He was an amnesiac. While information was constantly being revealed, his history in World War II, his alterations at the hands of the Weapon X program, he did not regain his full memories until the events of House of M in the mid-2000s. Once he did, once his history and his past were known to him, his violent nature started to become more understated. While he would lead 2 incarnations of a Black Ops team, he did so with the understanding that no one else would have to do the terrible things he was doing. His interactions with Laura Kinney, aka X-23, his teenage opposite-sex clone, just go with it, show that his greatest fear was that she could become a violent beast like him. Wolverine had played the surrogate dad for teenage girl characters before, most notably with Jubilee, and also with Kitty, now that I think about it, and it had helped him in his quest for humanity, but in Laura we see a clear parallel. As Logan rediscovered his lost humanity, so too did Laura discover the humanity that had been denied to her. It's telling that the events of Schism placed Wolverine on the side that wanted the X-Kids to have something approaching normal childhoods, while the desperation of the mutant situation had brought Cyclops to a more ruthlessly pragmatic philosophy. Even as Scott became more radicalized and started to drift into loner territory, Logan became more social and communal. This really was the climax of Wolverine's journey as a character. He had given up the savagery and amorality that had once defined him, and now had thrown himself into protecting others, of being a guardian of civilization. With Schism, we saw the crystallization of Wolverine's character growth. After the events of Avengers vs. X-Men and the end of the Schism arc, Wolverine's character was simply done. While he was still willing to dirty his hands, it was always in the name of ensuring that others didn't have to. He had given up the life of a warrior for the life of a schoolmaster. The beast had finally been tamed and, more importantly, domesticated. For all that he still tried to project the image of the badass loner, he was a member of multiple teams and seemed to team up with pretty much everyone in the Marvel Universe. When he lost his healing factor, that was the beginning of the end. Now he had to be careful. He had to be cautious. He could no longer throw himself into violence with wild abandon. He was, finally, human. And, his story finally coming to a close, Wolverine died. He died destroying an attempt to recreate the experiments that led to him. He died covered in the adamantium that had made him a weapon, having ensured that no one else would ever have their humanity stripped from them the way he did. Wolverine died, not as an animal, but as a man. It's fitting that the inheritor of his title, Laura Kinney, was the same person whom he helped find her humanity for. Wolverine went out of his way to keep her from becoming like him. He died as a human, and the new Wolverine would be someone who owed her humanity to him. The tale of Wolverine was the tale of the struggle between man and beast, of the fear that the trappings of civilization can be stripped away, of the fear that humanity can be lost, and of the triumph of rediscovering that humanity. Wolverine represents both the fear that lurks in the hearts of civilized men, and the conquering of that same fear. His is the triumph of humanity over baser instincts, a tale that resonates with the concept of civilization itself. At least until they eventually resurrect him, but hopefully that won't be for a few more years.